All right, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is coming up sometime. I don't know when, but I guess it's coming up soon. And the media is running with a headline claiming that, Drudge had this headline, for anyone who still reads Drudge, but that the White House has canceled the headlining comedian of this event because she made jokes about Trump. Or the White House Correspondents Association has canceled her, technically. So this is cancel culture on the right. That's supposed to be the headline. Here's People with their headline. White House Correspondents' Dinner cancels Amber Ruffin's appearance after comedian jokes about Trump administration. The article says, Amber Ruffin is no longer hosting this year's White House Correspondents' Dinner, an announcement that comes shortly after the comedian publicly joked about President Donald Trump's policies. Anyway, so that's what happened. So they canceled this comedian for jokes. That's the claim. So they're a bunch of hypocrites. It's cancel culture. Conservative cancel culture. Well, what were these jokes exactly? What did she say that led to her being disinvited from the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Well, here is Amber Ruffin on some kind of podcast telling these hilarious jokes. Listen.
Well, maybe you could do that for the White House Correspondents. Just change it up this year.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, God. Okay, so will anyone from the administration be attending? How much do you actually know about who will be in attendance? Do you get, the rundown?
I'm sure that I will at some point.
Well,
I know the news organizations that will be attending. I don't think the people confirm until quite a bit later. I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% interested in being like, ha, you're here, look at your stupid head, you're burned. I care that, you're kind of a bunch of murderers. They were like, you need to be, equal and make sure that that you give it to both sides and blah, blah, blah. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be freaking doing that, dude. And they want that false equivalency that the media does. They want that. It feels great. It makes them feel like human beings. But they shouldn't get to feel that way because they're not.
So those are the jokes, the quote-unquote jokes. She said the Trump administration are murderers, citation needed on that one, and that they aren't human beings. So should she have been canceled from the event for that? Yeah, obviously. Clearly. These are not jokes. It's not a joke. That's really what you think. And in fact, she even says, it's the opposite of telling jokes. She's actually saying that she doesn't really want to tell jokes because they're so terrible. She doesn't want to joke about them. So this is just blind, stupid rage. And it's why whatever set she planned to give at the dinner was guaranteed to be extremely lame and unfunny. We know that for sure. We know that, first of all, because she's a female comedian. And second, because she's full of anger and resentment, and that is just not a good starting place for comedy. It's why none of these hacks have figured out how to make fun of Trump in a funny way. 10 years in, none of these liberal comedians have figured out how to make fun of him. Because they're too angry, they're too hateful. You can't tell funny jokes about somebody that you truly just hate, because humor requires a certain amount of understanding to make fun of somebody in a funny way, which requires that you have at least some amount of empathy for them. Right? It's why political comedy these days is so often unfunny in both directions, by the way. Because you have to kind of understand where somebody is coming from in order to tell funny jokes about them. You have to be able to inhabit their minds, to look at the world from their vantage point so that you can then satirize it and make a parody of it. But most political humor is driven by pure resentment, which isn't funny. It's not intentionally funny anyway, but it's not funny to listen to someone be resentful. Maybe you laugh at them for being pathetic, but there's no wit in that. Did you know that over 140,000 family farms in the U.S. have closed down since 2017? Shocking, right? Well, meanwhile, grocery stores are stocking their shelves with mystery meat from, well, who really knows where? That's the mystery. But hey, at least it's cheap. If you actually care where your food comes from, it's time to check out GoodRanchers.com. I go with Good Ranchers because, call me crazy, I prefer knowing my dinner wasn't shipped from the other side of the planet. Their meat is born, raised, and harvested right here in the USA. Revolutionary concept, but that's what they do. And get this, no antibiotics, no added hormones, and no seed oils, just meat. Imagine that. One ingredient you can actually pronounce without a chemistry degree. These folks are practically showing off when it comes to transparency about where your food is coming from. All their meat is farm to table, zero mystery, meaning you're supporting American ranchers while serving food that won't make you question your life choices at 3 a.m. I've tried many of their steaks and other choices, and they're quite possibly the most tender, tasteful, clean protein options I have ever had. Right now, during their Spring into Action promotion, they actually managed to save you money while providing better, high-quality food. When you sign up, you'll get free bacon, ground beef, seed oil-free chicken nuggets, or wild-caught salmon in every order for a year, plus $40 off with code Walsh. So again, unless you enjoy mystery meat roulette, visit goodranchers.com today. Use code Walsh to get free meat for a year and $40 off your next order. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. The real question is why this woman was ever invited to begin with. And I had never heard of her before, so I went to YouTube to find her stand-up. And I actually had trouble finding actual stand-up comedy from this person who's supposedly a comedian, which should tell you something. You know, what I found were a bunch of segments on various late-night shows and that sort of thing. I had trouble finding a real stand-up set, which tells me this is not a real comedian. This is someone whose career was astroturfed because she's a liberal black female comedian. And so for that reason, she just gets she gets the platforms even though she's not funny. The closest thing I could find to a stand-up set was, just to give you an example, this was a clip from something called the Amber Ruffin show on a Peacock. And I don't know if that show still exists. I never heard of it. Nobody had ever heard of it. Nobody knows who this person is. And yet she had her own show. No one's ever heard of this person. She had her own show on NBC's streaming service, which tells you again the astroturf nature of these kinds of supposed comedians and entertainers. But here's the first clip that popped up on YouTube of her telling her hilarious jokes. Let's try to bear as much of this as we can.
Last Friday, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick vowed to end tenure for public university professors who teach critical race theory in their classrooms. He tweeted, "We banned it in publicly funded K through 12, and we will ban it in publicly funded higher ed." That is just one of the most recent examples of white Americans' refusal to educate students about the advantages of being white in this country. Well, if they won't let schools teach that lesson, then I guess I'll have to teach it right here, right now, in a little segment called
The ABCs of White Privilege.
There's a lot to learn, so let's get started. A is for assimilation. Assimilation is when people of color have to adjust natural things about themselves to make white people comfortable.
It doesn't get any better than that. That's basically it. So she's like Samantha Bee, but somehow less funny. And I didn't think that was possible. Samantha Bee is I thought in comedy terms, she's applying it to comedy. In scientific terms, she's absolute zero of comedy. Samantha Bee is. So how can you be less funny than an alleged comedian who had like a 20-year career in comedy, Samantha Bee did, and yet never once told a funny joke? Not one time. Nobody in the world can tell you their favorite Samantha Bee joke. I guarantee that. You've never in your life met a single human anywhere on the planet who said, "Oh man, this reminds me of that great Samantha Bee bit." It's never happened. Never said anything funny, ever. But again, her career, of course, was astroturf because she was a liberal woman and the powers that be wanted her to be funny, so they gave her a career. And now Amber Ruffin has come along and figured out a way to be less funny than her, which I didn't think was possible. Because the thing with liberal female comedians is that they don't even understand what a joke is, which is why I find it fascinating to watch them in a certain way. In a weird way, it's entertaining. It's entertaining in the way that it would be entertaining if a space alien from another galaxy were to land here and then for some reason immediately try to do a set at the local comedy club that same night. It would be a fascinating thing to watch because this is someone who doesn't understand the concept of a joke. And I know you might say, well, there's no reason to specify liberal or, you don't, if you're talking about female comedians, most of them aren't funny. You don't need to specify liberal in front of that. Or if you're talking about liberal comedians, most of them aren't funny, so you don't need to specify female, which is true. But when you combine the two, liberal and female, there's just no chance. You now have a person who cannot possibly be funny. They don't even understand the basic construction of a joke, and yet this person was invited to the White House to be the comedian at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Lots of reasons to cancel her, but they finally did anyway. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.